Today I will define the powerlifting squat and the Olympic weightlifting squat, or what I will call today the full range of motion squat. We will discuss 6 differences between the two, the pros and cons to each, and why you should even care. In 2012, just a few months after Truck Room 18 started, I decided I should get some coaching in the lifts to be a more well-rounded strength and conditioning coach. I quickly became obsessed with the sport of weightlifting and went down a path that included competing in the sport of weightlifting 22 times over a 7-year period. But in the beginning, one thing that was made very clear was that I would have to change the way that I squatted. I would have to go from a powerlifting style of squat, hips back, squatting to parallel, and move to a full range of motion squat. Chest up, knees forward, full depth squat to more closely mimic the bottom position of a clean. So I squatted with one style for more than 20 years and now have been doing a full range of motion squat for 12 years. I feel I have a lot of experience with both styles, so here are 6 differences between the two. Let's start with depth. For powerlifting, you have hit the bottom position when your hip crease is below the top of the knee. For weightlifting, your goal is maximum depth. So you have hit the bottom position when your hamstrings are on your calves. In other words, your knees have reached maximum flexion. Why are we doing this? And what's the difference? For the powerlifting squat, the purpose is to comply with the standards of the sport. Beyond that, we are using the powerlifting squat in our training to develop hypertrophy, strength, and power. For weightlifting, the back squat is intended to most closely mimic the bottom position of the clean. And the lower your bottom position, the lower to the ground you will be, the more capable you are of receiving a clean, the less you'll have to pull the barbell off the ground. And just like powerlifting, the full range of motion squat is used to create hypertrophy, develop strength, and power. I would also say that the full range of motion squat and working to perfect the positions of the full range of motion squat will increase your mobility and your athleticism. As far as mobility goes, the mobility demands are greater for the full range of motion squat, specifically at the ankle, knee, hip, and specifically hip internal rotation and through the thoracic spine. For the powerlifting squat, the bar is held as low as possible on the back. This moves the barbell further backward as well. It moves your center of gravity backward, causing an even bigger hinge at the hip. The full range of motion squat is the opposite. The bar is held as high and as forward as possible. This puts your center of gravity as far forward as it can be for a back squat, allowing for your hips to be a little more forward and your torso a little more vertical. As far as joint angles and the muscles involved, for the powerlifting squat, with your hips back, you hit much more flexion at the hip. Your hips are also further behind your center of gravity, so you are doing a ton of work at the hip, including the muscles involved in hip extension, like the hamstrings, the glutes, the lower back. Your knees are closer to the center of gravity and hit less flexion than the hips. So the knee and quadriceps are doing less of the work comparatively. For the full range of motion squat, your hips are more forward. Your hips are less flexed compared to the powerlifting version. And your hips are closer to the center of gravity. Your knees are further forward and way more flexed than with the powerlifting version. The full range of motion squat puts more work on the quadriceps than the powerlifting squat. As far as weight lifted, which version allows you to lift heavier weights? Clearly, the powerlifting version allows for more weight to be moved. There's less range of motion. There's greater dependence on the powerful muscles of the lower back. the glutes and hamstrings. So there are 6 differences. Why should you even care? Based on the fact that nobody watches my videos for more than 90 seconds, you don't care. My own crew doesn't even watch these videos. I would say that powerlifting is a great sport, and I have no issues with the sport or people that compete in the sport. But in my biased opinion, the full range of motion squat is superior in the sense that the mobility required is greater, the transfer to the athletic field is greater, the distribution of load between the hips and the knees is more equal. And science has showed repeatedly that moving your joints through the most range you can is excellent for muscular growth and for joint health. In my opinion, case closed. Feel free to tell me I'm wrong in the comments. See you next week.